So I had a pile of my old drawings and they didn't look like a total beginner's drawings, but they did still kind of look fairly beginner level. And I drew over them to improve them, and it was crazy. I could almost just trace the existing lines and they looked 10 times better. Maybe just a few small adjustments to the drawing here and there. So how is that possible? And is this all your drawings need? These little small adjustments and changes? So my name's Kenzo and this is Love Life Drawing. In our last video, I threw all my old drawings away because I did them for the sake of learning. They weren't works of art that are very precious. But also, I needed to make space in the house. Maybe you can guess why. We have a new addition to the family coming, lots of sleepless nights coming up here. But before I threw the drawings away, I fixed a pile of them using a marker pen. I decided to set a time limit of about 1 minute, sometimes closer to 2 minutes for each one. And we're going to start with the ones that needed a bit more work. So probably the biggest mistake I used to make is the same one that most of our students make, and that's being a bit conservative and straightening the poses. So to make them work, I needed to push the angles of the pose. And more specifically, some of them needed me to push the rib cage to a stronger angle versus the pelvis angle. And that creates a better squash and stretch in the torso. So a deeper indent on one side, maybe a little bit more stretched out on the other side. When the torso is bent, it's common to make that indent on the folded side too small, not go deep enough, and not let the other side push out enough, and just be a little bit reserved about it, right? Some of them just needed me to change the position of the head a bit. We always want to put the head up high, clearly above the shoulders. We think of heads as being above the shoulders, and to be fair, heads are above the shoulders, but depending on the pose, the shape of the head can overlap the shape of the torso and the shoulders, and you don't want to undo that when you're drawing it because that's often an interesting overlap. This one just needed the pelvis angled more strongly, and then the head angled more strongly the other way so that it was less straight overall. So there's a real theme to these, right? Some of the drawings needed me to just push the hips out wider like this, and that was basically it. It's really common to be a bit conservative and not let the curve go wide around the hips. We're afraid of using bold curves. For some reason, our brains are really, really conservative. We have a video about the 5 classic mistakes people make with gesture, and these mistakes that I was making were those same 5 mistakes. The reason that I can make videos about mistakes is because I've made those mistakes so many times. I'll link to it below. I think it's really worth assessing your own drawings against that video to see if you're making those mistakes. And I really love the fact that these drawings, which really look quite beginner level, start to look better with just these little adjustments. But it actually gets better. We can make even less adjustments and improve some of these drawings too. So another big problem I had was really patchy shading. So I didn't understand how to use shadows to explain the forms. So instead of clear planes and big simple shadow shapes, I was adding almost kind of random patches of dark tone. What a difference it makes to just find big shapes that really simply explain which parts of the form are facing the light and which are facing away. I always wanted to make it more complicated than it needed to be. Now, when I was doing this fixing exercise, I didn't have the model in front of me. I just had to imagine some lighting and make up some shapes. But still, it looked much better than having all those little random patches. Some of these needed 1 or 2 things adjusted in terms of the position or proportions of one area of the figure. So here, all I really needed was to reduce the size of the head. And that is one of the most common proportion issues that I used to have in my drawings. And it's really common among our students too. Maybe you're doing this as well, I don't know. I had a good sweep to this pose. I had pretty good proportions in the rest of the figure. It was really just reducing the head size, and what a crazy difference it made changing the size of the head. In this example, I just needed to lower the breasts a bit. For some reason, having the breasts up high is another classic mistake. Everything else looked pretty good. I think I'd been drawing a bit longer when I did this drawing probably. We have another really good video about common proportion problems And you should be checking your drawings against that list of common proportion problems too, so I'll link to that below as well. You know, I remember doing all these drawings feeling like I was far from anything good, and I felt like such a beginner despite having drawn for years at this point. Well, it turns out I was getting close. It turns out I had improved a lot. I just didn't realize it. But you know what? That's not all. It gets better, so check this out. Some of these, I didn't have to do anything at all to fix them. So I just really needed to basically trace the lines that were already there. That's how close I was with these drawings. They didn't look great, partly because of just nervous line quality. So just using more confident lines made all the difference. I was also adding some unnecessary information to the drawing, little random lines and patches of shading or whatever, and that comes from being unsure about what matters. So I just needed to leave some things out, you know, like all the little strands in the hair or these random marks on the figure. You can see I had pretty good proportions, pretty good angles and shapes in these. I had done so much good work, and I just didn't have a couple of components in place to kind of reveal how well I was doing. And this is why it's really hard for me as a teacher when I see our students' drawings and then I hear them beat themselves up about how bad they think their drawings look, when I can see so many things working really well. So our students probably think I'm always just being nice all the time, because usually I point out lots of good things and then I'll say, and now you just need to work on this, this, and this. But it's not because I'm just being nice. I know what I'm looking at, and there's often so many things that the person has gotten right. All that hard work is paying off. It just doesn't always show up in the drawings really clearly, unfortunately. But I can see it now that I have a more experienced eye. Now, unfortunately, the message from this video isn't, hey, you can just instantly fix all your drawing problems right now. Look how easy it is. Even though I was getting close with my drawings back then, making good progress, that doesn't mean that if I had just known these few things I'd mentioned in this video, I could have skipped the years of practice that I did to learn this stuff. So those confident marks that I mentioned, that requires muscle memory, and that is a slow process to build. It doesn't just come from understanding, it comes from lots of repetitions and drawing time. Being able to see what's interesting in the pose and leave out everything else. That just takes a lot of practice and experience too. If I had some kind of special trick which would let you bypass the quantity of practice that you need to become good at drawing, I would tell that to you. I promise I would tell you, but I haven't found anything like that. Unfortunately, there's no getting around the fact that you need to consistently practice your fundamental drawing skills across a good amount of time, maybe a few years, to become really good at drawing. Not decades, but certainly a few years. What I hope you'll take from this though is that you can progress and be improving a lot, but the drawings might not obviously be getting better, which is quite frustrating and disheartening. It's hard to find that belief that you're going to get where you want to go when the clear positive reinforcement from your drawings isn't always super obvious. But if you're doing exercises designed to improve your fundamental drawing skills, you are probably improving and on the right track and going where you want to go. If you're working on seeing things like the relationship between the ribcage and the pelvis, learning to see the distances and angles between things better and better, simplifying your values so your shapes of light and dark, working on your perspective skills, practicing cross-contour lines, other ways of simplifying what you're seeing, you're going to get to where you want to go. It's just not always going to be super obvious in the short term. By the way, these are all things that you can practice with our new free Foundations challenge. It's like a mini course. The link is below to do that. It's getting really good feedback from the people that are doing it, so I really recommend checking it out. And there's nothing to lose. It's free to try it out. So make sure you assess your drawings against those common proportion and gesture mistakes in those two videos I mentioned, which I'm going to link below. And most importantly, make sure that you keep your belief in what you're doing and how you can and will get to where you want to go, and you might already be closer than you think.